Hi, I'm Brian McCormick, an assistant professor in the management department at Northern Illinois University, and I'm thrilled to talk about our article at the Journal of Management titled Scientific Contributions of Within Person Research in Management, Making the Juice Worth the Squeeze. The other members of our research team are Cody Reeves, an assistant professor at Brigham Young University, Patrick Downs from Rutgers and Texas Christian University, Ning Lee at the University of Iowa, and Remus Illies at the National University of Singapore. The focus of our research is within-person studies, which have also been referred to as experience sampling studies, ESM, or daily diary studies. The thing that makes these studies ubiquitous right now is probably the fact that they are able to enable us as researchers to ask and answer entirely different research questions from what we've been able to pose in traditional between-person research. So as a means of illustrating the differences there, between-person research might, if we were looking at something such as motivation, might enable us to, if we have a bunch of applicants for jobs, try to figure out which of these applicants is most motivated and then hire that person because the most motivated applicant will be most likely to produce the best resulting job performance. Well, within-person research takes an entirely different paradigm. That accounts for the fact that not one of us is the same degree of motivated today as we were yesterday, and we won't be the same degree of motivated tomorrow as we are today. So within-person research accounts for this fluctuation or change that inevitably occurs in employees from one day to the next, and even from hour to hour or minute to minute. So what we tried to do is we looked at 378 within-person or ESM studies to try to figure out how can we create a resource that future researchers can use to really capitalize on all the promise that within-person studies have for enabling the kinds of findings that really change the way we think about phenomena. And so we wanted to think about how can we really help people to capitalize on the promise of within-person research for changing the way we think about management. So we decided to really focus in on three focal areas. First, we wanted to think about what kinds of questions are researchers asking. So what we did is we looked at the hypotheses being posed in all of these studies. And so we wanted to think about, are these studies really asking the kinds of questions that have a temporal component? And we found in 2/3 of the cases, indeed, studies actually had a temporal component, where they were thinking about questions that required the use of studying things over time. And so we also highlighted a bunch of exemplar studies and provided some ideas for ways in which researchers in the future can continue that process of trying to really ask complex and nuanced temporal questions. The second thing we focused in on was this notion of when we do within-person studies, we're looking at employees' states, their behaviors, or the situations they face, and how those things are changing over time. And so for some constructs that are being studied, the idea is that they're actually fairly stable. And if we study something tomorrow, it'll probably be similar to studying it today. Whereas for other phenomena, there's a large degree of change from day to day. And so for all the most commonly studied constructs, we have revealed with data how much do these constructs actually change over time. And we think providing that data will be useful for future theory building. The third area we focused on was how much do within-person relationships actually differ from between-person relationships of the same constructs. And to try to make that more simple to understand, what we wanted to do here is take any two constructs. So for instance, you could take stress and interpersonal conflict. And we wanted to look at those two constructs both within and between person. So between person, the idea would be people who face more stress on the job are likely to be involved in more interpersonal conflict on the job. Whereas a within-person perspective would suggest on a given day that I experience more stress in the workplace, on that day I'm likely to be more apt to be involved in interpersonal conflict. So, if the relationships are the same between person as they are within person, which is what we found in about 75% of cases, then we could generalize our findings from the within person level to the between person level or vice versa. And we wouldn't necessarily need to conduct studies at both levels of analysis because we could simply take what we know from one level and extrapolate it out to the other level. But if the relationships are different at the within person level than they are at the between person level, as we found in about a quarter of cases, well, there we need more empirical studies to try to understand why is it different at one level of analysis than another. And we need different theory to explain why a construct in a relationship at one level is quite different than it is at a different level. So we really hope that the data that we provide and the insights that are in our paper will be helpful for future within-person theory building and research. Best of luck with all your within-person studies. Thank you for listening.